exactly like the original Kong. With this, the world is ours.
This robot can do anything I program.
You can see that I had it constructed exactly as Carl Nelson planned, and my genius translated them into a robot Kong that can certainly do anything the original Kong would have done. We are all ready to start. You'll observe my creation doing now what's never been done.
People, LP2000 right back at you with another video. Yes, welcome back to another edition of Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews on behalf of Collect All Monsters. And I got a great one for y'all today. Oh God, this mechanical monstrosity is so amazing. I'm gonna get that out the way right now, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, such a cool vinyl model kit we are talking about today. So again, you already clicked the title, you know exactly what and who we're covering here. So let's dive head first into this awesome vinyl model kit review. And today we take a look at the Rotokaiju 35cm vinyl model kit of the awesome robot that beat the crap out of King Kong on top of Tokyo Tower in the epic film from 1967, King Kong Escapes, with the one and the only awesome Mechanikong. As you can see here, I have the beautiful model kit in all his mechanical glory. Oh yes, it is awesome, and then some in a bag of chips. Yes. Oh God, this thing is so amazing. So before we go any further, let me give a huge shout out and thank you to two special people for making this video happen. First and foremost, Beto Matali, the man who sculpted this awesome Mechanikong. I'll talk more about him momentarily. And Steve Ceragioli, his partner in crime when it comes to Rotokaiju, and he's the guy that built and painted the model kit for me. So again, thank you to Beto and thank you to Steve for making this happen for me. Now, this normally why I would showcase the packaging before I get into the model kit, but I don't have the packaging physically per se, but I will show you what the packaging looks like. You know, it has a picture of the awesome kit when it's all built up, 35cm model kit. Rotokaiju, like you see at the bottom, is called Mecha Gorilla, and I'll talk more about that momentarily. Why it's not called Mechanikong, but as you can see here, the artwork for the model kit, it was absolutely stunning, you know what I'm saying? But it's not about the artwork, it's about the awesome model kit of Mechanikong. Once again, this is the Rotokaiju 35cm vinyl model kit of the awesome Mechanikong, the Deluxe edition. I forgot to mention that earlier. But yes, this is the Deluxe edition that comes with a few accessories that I'll talk about momentarily. But again, such a great model kit. Now, again, if you don't know what Rotokaiju is, first and foremost, let me suggest that you go on Facebook and join the Rotokaiju Facebook page. And Rotokaiju is a company that specializes in doing model kits based off the Toho versions of King Kong. And as y'all know, if you're a seasoned collector and you've been in the game for about a minute, you know that the Toho Kong is not too well represented amongst kaiju collectible companies because of the whole legal rights issues involving the Toho version of Kong, quite frankly. So he's a character that can't be touched by a lot of companies for just an insane reason, and we ain't got to go into that right now. But Rotokaiju was a company that was conceived by both Beto Matali and assisted by Steve Ceragioli, and they saw a need from a lot of people that were asking and clamoring for a Toho version of Kong in a collectible form. Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to Mechanikong, they have produced a few Mechanikongs before. Like, they have done a Bandai, they have done, I think, a YSMF version of Mechanikong. This company called Albatross did a great Mechanikong collectible. And, of course, the Billiken kit, you know, of Mechanikong, which I did have that kit at one time. I didn't do that kit justice, but still, there was really super cool representations of Mechanikong. But enter Rotokaiju with Beto Matali and, of course, Steve Ceragioli, and they saw a need, and they saw a lot of fans clamoring and asking for something involved in the Toho versions of Kong, and they saw fit to give us that. They first did a 1967 King Kong, but I think they call it a giant gorilla, if I'm not mistaken, because of the whole rights issues, because they can't officially call their products King Kong. They also did a 1962 version from King Kong vs. Godzilla with his arms up, which I think is a real stunning model kit. They also reissued that 62 Kong. I think it was called Giant Gorilla 62 2.0, but his arms were down, quite frankly. Still the same model kit, but his arms were in a different position. That was an awesome model kit. They also reissued that kit as a drunk version of Kong, because the 2.0, I forgot to mention, came with the alternate head where you can display him as a regular version of Kong, but display him with that drunk head that had him look intoxicated when he was drinking the berry juice. There was an accessory that came with the 2.0, but they reissued the drunk Kong as a standalone kit, you know, with just the drunk head, and it came with some berry jars that you could put in Kong's hands or whatever. And I remember the day on the Rotokaiju Facebook page, which I highly suggest everybody go to. If you're a fan of Rotokaiju and you want to get more in the know about their products, what they may be coming down the pipeline, I highly suggest go on Facebook and enlist on the Rotokaiju King Kong 62 and 67 Facebook page, right? And I remember that day because if you're on that group, again, you get updates, you get news, you get information on when something new from Rotokaiju is going to be coming. And on the day, I believe, of May 25th, 2018, that's when Beto and Steve announced that they were going to do a version of Mechanikong or Mecha Gorilla. And I remember that, and I was like, wow, that is amazing. And it finally got released to vendors as well as people who ordered it, I want to say late 2021 going to 2022. Now, there were several ways that you can get this Mechanikong, quite frankly. You can get Mechanikong, you know, by himself that doesn't have, you know, the extra accessories like the dome and the grenade bombs on his belt. You know, you could order him that way. You could order the Deluxe, which what I have here. You could also have a deluxe version as well as another version of King Kong 67, a 2.0 if you will, that was going to be combined with Mechanikong for a battle set. So there were several ways that you could get this kit, quite frankly. And I opted to go for the battle set, but I had Steve make Mechanikong first. He's going to finish the regular Kong sometime down the line, quite frankly. Because you already know me. I'm a huge fan of King Kong Escapes. It's my favorite King Kong film of all time. So I really had no choice. My only option was the Deluxe battle set, you know what I'm saying? Because I love that version of King Kong and I love Mechanikong. And again, it started filtering to people's hands and vendors' hands late 2021 going to 2022, and because again, even though this was announced in 2018, there were some delays, unfortunately, and then the pandemic hit, and all those reasons fed into why this kit was released at a later date, quite frankly. And I finally got my hands on this kit, I want to say May of this year, of 2023, you know what I'm saying? And again, I'm so glad that I was able to get my hands on this guy, because this is a stunning representation, in my opinion, probably the best representation of Mechanikong that is out there right now. You know what I'm saying? And that is how I got my hands on this Deluxe model kit of Mechanikong. So again, thank you to Beto and thank you to Steve for making this happen for me. So now let's get up close and personal with Mechanikong. Again, Mechanikong, it is such an amazing kit. Again, it's 35 centimeters tall, which is a good sized kit if you really think about it. 35 centimeters probably equates to maybe 13 or 14 inches tall, which is not bad in my opinion. So the size of Mechanikong is really, really good. The lightness is really, really good. You know, the toes are sculpted really well. Everything about the sculpt for like his lower body, his legs, you know, the rivets here and there on his legs, you know, whatever, sculpted really, really well. I also believe that this kit also came with alternate arms, so I think alternate shoulder pieces where you can position his arms in a different position, quite frankly. But I opted to go for this. I wanted Mechanikong to have his arms stretched out, because that's mostly how we saw him in the film anyways. The arms sculpted really well, the hands sculpted really well, just the overall sculpt, courtesy of Beto, and with some input from Steve, honestly, just makes this such an awesome rendition of Mechanikong. You know, the eyes, you know, his big nose holes, you know, whatever. Those big rivets on the side of his jaws, on his head, you know, whatever. It looks really, really good. Just the whole likeness of Mechanikong here is absolutely stunning. And again, if you got just the standard, it came with just Mechanikong by itself. But again, since I opted to go for the deluxe, it came with 3 special features with this kit. First and foremost, it came with the bomb grenade belt, which is honestly something I've always wanted when it comes to Mechanikong. Now again, I did get my hands on the Billiken like a long time ago, and I tried to replicate the bomb belt. And that right there just shows me that I have no business building and painting model kits, you know what I'm saying? Because what I did, because again, I'm not an expert when it comes to building and painting these kits. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I can admit that. That's why I know I have no business when it comes to building paint model kits. That's why I have Steve Ceragioli. That's why I have Marcellus Winters. That's why I have Burley Vang. I have Mark Sang-Yang. I got John LeGrand. They can do it. I can't. I don't want to mess it up. But what I did with Mechanikong, the Billiken Mechanikong, I wanted a grenade bomb belt so bad that what I did was I took some batteries, I think some AA or AAA batteries, and I painted them like dark silver, which was comparable to the kit at the time. And what I did was I super glued it, the batteries all around his torso, or at least his waist, to simulate the bomb belt. Unfortunately, I used Gorilla Glue. At the time, I didn't know what Gorilla Glue was. I didn't know how expensive Gorilla Glue is if you use too much of it. And let's just say I used too much of it. And there was like the next day, because when you use Gorilla Glue, it doesn't expand at first, right? It kind of works like super glue at first. So what I did was I used a lot of Gorilla Glue to make sure that the bomb belts, at least the batteries, didn't fall off, right? And I placed maybe 10 of them around the front of Mechanikong, the Billiken Mechanikong. And the very next day, there was like just giant clumps of dried up Gorilla Glue on Mechanikong, which really messed up the model kit itself. Again, which proves that, again, I have no business building and painting model kits. But ever since then, I was like, you know what? If I ever do get a chance to get another version of Mechanikong, I want to get Mechanikong with the bomb belt. And the bomb belt looks absolutely great. The individual bombs, each individual bomb looks great. You know what I'm saying? It's sculpted really, really well. You know what I'm saying? Just really looks exactly like the film, because even though he has bombs on the front of his body, he didn't have bombs going all around his body, quite frankly. So this is just exactly like the suit, where the bombs are just in the front of his body, not the back. But each individual bomb looks really, really good. That's the first cool accessory that this kit comes with. The second one, it comes with the hypnotic King Kong disco ball that Mechanikong used to try to hypnotize King Kong at the end of the film, quite frankly. And it's clear, quite frankly. And I think it's magnetized, so you can put it on top of the dome of Mechanikong, and it looks absolutely great. It's a small piece, but it's another artifact from the film, quite frankly. When you see it, and if you know about King Kong Escapes, you know exactly what this is. So I actually love that Steve added this to this kit, you know what I'm saying? It just just adds to the overall presentation of Mechanikong, and it's something that we did see in the film, quite frankly. And last and certainly, but not least, the last accessory, Steve also installed some LEDs in the lights, and if you press the back of his neck, you know, he'll have light up eyes, because there were times in the film where Mechanikong did have light up eyes. So the accessories overall is absolutely amazing. The dome, the light up eyes, the bombs on his belt. Again, just makes this, in my opinion, the absolute best representation of Mechanikong out there. Sculpt wise, it is perfect. Paint job wise, it is perfect. Both Beto and Steve just came together and made just an awesome, one-of-a-kind collectible, quite frankly. So again, thank you to both of those fine gentlemen for making that happen. Not too much really going on here with this review, but again, it speaks for itself, quite frankly. The lightness of Mechanikong, the weapons, the accessories, and all that good stuff is really, really, really cool. Now, I want to make this clear, because again, I'm a huge fan of King Kong Escapes. Now, mind you, this wasn't really present in the film. He didn't have all these weapons all at one time. Remember, in the beginning of the film, he had the bomb grenade. He had the bomb grenades on his belt in the beginning of the film, right? Because he was trying to dig out Element X. But then when he shut down, they took away the bomb grenades off his belt. But later on in the film, they added the hypnotic dome on his head to trap King Kong. But he didn't have both weapons at the same time, quite frankly. So anyway, even though this is not really accurate to the film, but still the weapons were there on Mechanikong. So you might as well say this is like a fully weaponized version of Mechanikong. And it looks absolutely great. So even though this wasn't like a look that we saw in the film, we did see it nonetheless in certain scenes, but still it doesn't take away from the fact that this is an awesome vinyl kit of Mechanikong. So again, man, sculpt-wise, paint job-wise, size, just an awesome rendition of Mechanikong. There's no other ways to describe it. Oh, yes, yes, yes. There might be some out there, maybe on eBay, or maybe, again, go on the Rotokaiju Facebook page, enlist on that group, and then ask around if there's anybody selling any kits of Mechanikong. And if you do want one, if you do want a quality, probably perfect version of Mechanikong, look no further than this guy right here. Trust me when I say that. Now, I have a few size comparisons planned for this video, and you know what? Let's go into the first one. Now, we have ourselves here an awesome mechanical double of the awesome ape known as King Kong. So you know what? Let's bring in two figures that I have that is a mechanical double or mechanical version of King Ghidorah and a mechanical version of Godzilla. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, who I'm talking about. So let's bring those two mechanical monsters together and see how they pair up with this awesome mechanical monster in this first size comparison. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the first size comparison, and I know what y'all are thinking. I know exactly what y'all are thinking, that none of these monsters or characters have ever appeared in a movie before. They all come from different movies. But they all do have something in common, where they're basically are mechanical doubles of already established monsters, famous monsters. Probably the three most famous monsters of all time. So let's go from left to right. So we have the X plus 30 centimeter Faber Sculptors line of the 1974 Mecha Godzilla. Yes, yes, yes. In the middle we have a 25 centimeter resin model kit of the Resin Chef Mecha King Ghidorah. Yes, yes, yes. And of course, the man that I watched to the far right is Mechanikong. And again, they share a common bond where they're basically are mechanical or cyborg versions of Godzilla, King Kong, and King Ghidorah. And as far as like Mechagodzilla and Mechanikong, that's like one of those fantasy matchups that obviously we never got, but a lot of fans would have loved to have seen that. We would have loved to have seen Mechanikong battle Mechagodzilla, just like we saw the original King Kong fight Godzilla. You know what I'm saying? But that's one of those fantasy matches that I'm sure that a lot of fans would love to have seen. Even though that, again, when you compare them when it comes to movies, Mechanikong is a little bit shorter than Mechagodzilla. And when it comes to these model kits, you know, Mechanikong is bigger than what he should be. But if he was scaled up to Mechagodzilla like the original King Kong was scaled up to fight Godzilla, you know what I'm saying, it would still be an interesting battle, even though I would believe that Mechagodzilla would turn Mechanikong into scrap heap. Just being honest, he has more weapons and he's more durable than Mechanikong. But even seeing them together is really, really a cool thing to see. And as far as like Mecha King Ghidorah, oh my god, there's not too many versions of Mecha King Ghidorah out there. At least quality, realistic versions of Mecha King Ghidorah out there. So again, Mechagodzilla, Mechanikong, Mecha King Ghidorah, again, the three most famous cyborgs of already established famous monsters in Godzilla, King Kong, and King Ghidorah. So again, I so love this shot. I also love this size comparison. So that's it with the first size comparison, at least size mechanical comparison with the three cyborgs here. Yes, yes, yes. So let's go with the second one now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, none of these monsters have ever appeared in a film together. But this next size comparison actually did happen. It didn't happen in a movie, but it did happen in a manga adaptation in regards to Godzilla. So you know what? I'm not going to spoil any more about it. Let's go to the second size comparison right now, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the second size comparison. Again, just like the first one, I know you're probably saying to yourselves that this never happened in the film. Mechanikong didn't come across the Heisei Godzilla or Mechagodzilla in any type of film, and technically you're right. But this happened in an official manga that was made after the 1992 movie of Godzilla vs. Mothra. Actually, let me back up, because in 1990, before we got to Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, one of the early ideas or plans for that movie was for Godzilla not to fight King Ghidorah, but to fight King Kong. Yes, there were plans to make a King Kong vs. Godzilla sequel in the Heisei period of Godzilla. But unfortunately, the rights for Kong were too much for Toho that they wanted to spend at that time. So they opted to go with Mechanikong. You know what I'm saying? They thought that maybe by using Mechanikong, that maybe they can get by doing that movie of having Mechanikong against Godzilla. But unfortunately, since Mechanikong bears so much of a likeness to the original Kong, they couldn't get Mechanikong, so that's why they had to settle for King Ghidorah. But the early idea for Mechanikong versus Godzilla was for, again, Mechanikong to fight Godzilla, but yet Mechanikong would inject like some scientists or some soldiers and like this vehicle that would be basically implanted inside Godzilla, and the soldiers and the scientists would battle Godzilla from inside of Godzilla's body, while Mechanikong would battle Godzilla on the outside. But again, that idea fell through because of the rights issue. However, going back to the manga, there was a manga that was made by Kodansha Comics after 1992's Godzilla vs. Mothra. And the manga was called Godzilla King of the Monsters. And in that manga, Godzilla faced off against various old school monsters, you know. But there was one scenario where an evil scientist that appears in the comics actually rebuilds Mechanikong and actually rebuilds Mechagodzilla. And it's a show of Mechagodzilla and a show of Mechanikong. And they would fight the Heisei Godzilla. In fact, Mechagodzilla, again, since he was the Showa one, he was called Mechagodzilla 3. Because remember, in Terror Mechagodzilla, Mechagodzilla was called Mechagodzilla 2. So basically in that scenario, Mechanikong and Mechagodzilla would team up to fight the awesome, powerful, super nuclear injected Heisei Godzilla. And that right there sounds so intriguing. It sounds so amazing. I think in the manga, Godzilla basically destroyed both of them with ease. But you know what? That's typical of the Heisei Godzilla. He destroyed everything, quite frankly. But again, that scenario really intrigued me. So when I was doing my research on Mechanikong and I came across this, I had to put this in this video to show you that, yeah, even though it technically didn't happen in the film, it did happen in the manga, which is technically a piece of Godzilla media. So yeah, just try and find it. It's called, again, Godzilla King of the Monsters from 1992. It's a manga from Kodansha Comics. And in that manga, Mechanikong teamed up with Mechagodzilla and they fought the Heisei Godzilla. It's kind of like an inverse of what we saw in the Monster vs. Godzilla vs. Kong, where we saw a flesh and blood Godzilla and a flesh and blood King Kong fight a mechanical version of Godzilla. Now it's reversed, where we have a mechanical version of King Kong and a mechanical version of Godzilla fight a flesh and blood Godzilla. Between the two scenarios, I think I like this one better. Yeah, but that is it with the second size comparison. Again, it never happened in the film, But put Mechanikong with these two figures creates another option that I can put on my shelf, and it's something that you can do for yourselves as well. You know what I'm saying? So that's it with the second size comparison. Again, with Mechanikong, with Mechagodzilla, and of course, this is my 1991 4cm model kit of the Horizon 91 Godzilla. Again, this is so amazing. It is so amazing. Now, we talked about in size comparisons, the first two size comparisons of basically fantasy scenarios that didn't happen in a live action film. But you know what? It is time to put Mechanikong with figures of monsters that he actually did appear in the awesome film of King Kong Escapes. So let me bring a version of King Kong as well as Gorosaurus from that film with Mechanikong here in the last size comparison. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the final size comparison. Now, I know I've been kind of killing it with the size comparisons in this video, but I want to show you how great this Mechanikong will look up against other collectibles that you may have in your collections as well, quite frankly. But again, we're done with the fantasy scenarios. Now let's talk about the monsters that actually did appear with him in King Kong Escapes in this size comparison. And of course, the man of the hour, Mechanikong, right there in the middle right there. To the left, we have the original model kit that actually put Rotokaiju on the map. Their first model kit, if you will, of the 1967 giant gorilla, also known as King Kong 1967. And of course, to the right, we have the X Plus 30cm Gorosaurus from 1967. And right there in the foreground, if you can see them, of course, I have two little mini figures that actually Mark Sang-yang made for me that I put with the custom-made King Kong Escapes diorama that he made for me a few years ago. Right next to Kong, we have a mini version of Susan Watson. And right next to Gorosaurus, we have a mini version of the evil Doctor Who. And as you can see here, this is a cool comparison. This is a cool shot of basically all three major monsters from King Kong Escapes, aside from that crappy looking sea snake. We don't need a sea snake in this comparison. But again, this actually is a great comparison. Now, mind you, the Kong here, again, he may be a little bit smaller in comparison to Mechanikong, because again, Mechanikong is a big kit, 35 centimeters. So maybe Kong is a little bit shorter than what he should be. That's why they're doing a 2.0 version of him that again came with Mechanikong in the deluxe battle set. And again, I'm gonna get that from Steve later on this year. But until I do get him, this is a great Kong to pair up with Mechanikong, quite frankly. And having Gorosaurus here, even though all three monsters didn't appear at the same time in the film, there are some backstage photographs of Gorosaurus, Mechanikong, and Kong battling each other, even though it didn't happen in the film. But this still is a cool comparison. And I also have a Tokyo Tower replica in my collection. And when you put that thing with Kong and Mechanikong in the same shot, again, between here with Gorosaurus, the many figures of Susan Watson and Doctor Who, the fantasy scenarios I talked about earlier, you have some options on your hands. Or if you want to put Mechanikong standing alone, it is still a worthwhile piece. So again, if you're a fan of Mechanikong and a fan of King Kong Escapes, or a fan of Mechanikong in King Kong Escapes, again, you owe it to yourself to go after this piece. And again, whether you have him standing alone, there are plenty of options that you can put him with if you don't want him standing alone, with Kong, with Gorosaurus, with Godzilla, and other figures, you know what I'm saying? Either way, get this guy in your collection. You will not be disappointed. Yes. So that's it with all the size comparisons. So let's go to the final commentary portion of the video with my final thoughts of the awesome Rotokaiju 35cm vinyl model kit of the deluxe edition of the awesome Mechanikong. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Okay, folks, I'm back with my final thoughts of the Rotokaiju 35cm vinyl model kit of the deluxe edition of the awesome Mechanikong. Oh my God, 10 out of 10. This thing is amazing. Sculpt wise, paint job wise, the accessories. Oh my God, just from top to bottom, this thing is so amazing. In my opinion, the quintessential Mechanikong piece or collectible that you could ever add to your collection. Nothing against the Bandai, the YSMF, or the Billiken, or the Albatross, or any other Mechanikong collectibles that are out there. I think this one is the cream of the crop. This is the best one. And again, he's still out there for a good price, you know what I'm saying? Because he just got out there, you know, a couple years ago or a year ago. So So he's still relatively fresh in a lot of respects. And so if you're able to find this guy for a good price, I highly recommend you go after this piece. Now, as you saw in size comparisons, again, whether you have him standing alone or whether you have him up against other pieces, whether they're fantasy scenarios or fantasy battles or the monsters that did appear with him in King Kong Escapes, either way, this is a quality, one-of-a-kind, an amazing piece, and I'm so glad to have it in my collection. Yes, yes, yes. And again, subscribe to the Rotokaiju Facebook page. You know what I'm saying? Because you never know what else they may come out in terms of the Toho versions of Kong later on this year or maybe next year. I know Steve has expressed interest in actually making a gigantic size kit of Mechanikong, so you never know. That may come at some point, you know what I'm saying? But until that happens, this is the best one. And again, thank you to Beto and thank you to Steve for making this happen. Again, I remember that post from May 25th, 2018. And here we are, you know, a few years later. You know, setbacks involved, delays, challenges, the pandemic, all that played a role. But you know what? It is finally here after all those setbacks. And it was well worth the wait. There's no way else to describe that. Now, let's talk about Mechanikong before we get up out of here. Now, I've always enjoyed Mechanikong. I love Mechanikong from King Kong Escapes. In a way, without Mechanikong, we probably wouldn't have gotten Mecha Godzilla and probably Mecha King Ghidorah. So we owe a lot to Mechanikong. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of people tend to think that Mechanikong was actually a creation that Toho made, but actually it wasn't. Mechanikong was actually a character that came from the King Kong cartoon show that came out in 1966. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why we got King Kong Escapes in 1967. Because, again, the King Kong show was so popular that, again, the people who had the rights to King Kong, who basically ran the show, Rankin Bass, they had an option that they wanted to make a live-action version of King Kong that was based off the cartoon. Now, again, they had an original treatment made up for it, but that movie ended up being Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, so they came out a year later with a better treatment that really coincided more with the cartoon show. Hence, we got King Kong Escapes. And again, Mechanikong was not an original Toho creation. It was a creation that was made on the show. Now, on the show, kind of like the movie of King Kong Escapes, basically, King Kong, the King Kong show is about these, I think a couple people called the Bonds, and they discover Kong on Mondo Island, you know, whatever, and they befriend Kong. But there's also this evil guy called Doctor Who that has tried multiple times to get control of Kong to basically rule the world, you know what I'm saying? Basically what the live action version would do in 1967. And in one particular episode, right, King Kong is blamed for doing some damage to New Guinea, right? And come to find out that it actually wasn't King Kong, but actually it was Doctor Who in a mechanical double of King Kong called Mechanikong. So basically, Mechanikong was doing damage, but they end up blaming the real King Kong for. I wonder why I've seen that scenario before. Anyways, once it's revealed that Mechanikong was the true culprit behind the damage to New Guinea, that's when they bring in the real King Kong to fight Mechanikong. And basically everything that Kong does to Mechanikong, it does absolutely nothing. He punches Mechanikong, it doesn't faze him. Basically, Mechanikong, in a way, kind of mops the floor with King Kong in the cartoon show and ends up getting short-circuited at the end. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of wish, even though I love Mechanikong from King Kong Escapes, but I kind of wish that he was more like the cartoon version of Mechanikong, because on the show, again, Mechanikong was built as a weapon to deal with King Kong once and for all. In the movie, he's only built to dig for an element. He was never built to design, at least he was never designed to fight the original King Kong. Only when King Kong doesn't do what Doctor Who wants him to do is when they use Mechanikong to try and trap Kong and try and fight Kong. But he was never meant to battle the real King Kong. Unlike Mechagodzilla, alright? Mechagodzilla was designed to not only destroy the Earth, but to kill Godzilla in the process. Mechanikong was not. And a good chunk of King Kong Escapes, Mechanikong is dormant. He doesn't really do anything. Like, he appears in the beginning of the film, in the spectacular opening of the film, but he shuts down. And again, he's more so dormant throughout the entirety of the film. But he does redeem himself at the end when he does manhandle King Kong. You know what I'm saying? One of the few characters or monsters that actually can physically manhandle King Kong, a monster that's known for his brute strength. So it was nice to see a monster really, you know, give Kong a taste of his own medicine. And then when they climb on top of Tokyo Tower, which is something that we've never seen before. We have never seen giant monsters climb a building and then do battle on top of it. So that was nice to see. But at the same time, the movie doesn't end with Mechanikong's destruction. The movie ends with the death of Doctor Who. So in a lot of ways, even though Mechanikong is awesome, he's not the true villain of the film. Doctor Who is, in a lot of respects. So again, I love Mechanikong, but I do wish that he was used a little bit better in the film, quite frankly. More so used like how Mechagodzilla was used in '74, but it still does not take away from the fact that Mechanikong had an awesome presence in King Kong Estates. And matter of fact, a lot of people think he was like the best suit in the movie, because a lot of people don't really love the Kong suit, quite frankly. So again, there's a lot more pros in Mechanikong and King Kong Estates than there is cons, quite frankly. But at the same time, I do love Mechanikong. I really do, from his appearance in the film, from his appearance in the cartoon, and now his appearance here in this awesome Kaiju collectible, courtesy of Rotokaiju. Yes, yes, yes. So again, if you can find one for a good price, I highly recommend you go after it. There's no question about that. Yes, yes, yes. So that pretty much concludes my review of the 35cm Rotokaiju vinyl model kit of the deluxe edition of the awesome Mechanikong. From a super cool appearance from the epic, awesome film from 1967, King Kong Escapes. If you have any questions, comment down in the comment section. Hit me on Facebook via Let's Be Champions. We'll definitely go from there. Yes, once again, awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Beto, if you're watching. I really do appreciate it. I can't wait to see what will be the next project from Rotokaiju. Again, I mentioned earlier that Steve has expressed interest in doing a gigantic size kit of Mechanikong. I think he also said he wanted to do a gigantic size kit of the 62 King Kong. You know what I'm saying? So again, I think there's some great stuff in store for us when it comes to Rotokaiju. But again, I so love that company and that endeavor because they were made by fans. They saw a need from other fans that, yes, we would like to have more versions, at least collectibles, of Toho Kong. And Beto and Steve saw that, like, you know what? We got to do something about that. So I'm glad that they took the initiative and give us fans what we have wanted, what we've been asking and begging for so long. And y'all have given us quality products time after time after time. And again, I can't wait to look forward to see what else you may bring to us in the future. But in the meantime, this will hold us over until the next big awesome project from Rotokaiju comes our way. Yes, yes, yes. Now, in regards to the next video on Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews, I'm kind of torn because I have two special videos that I want to do, and they are both gigantic size pieces. And you're going to have to wait and see which one I would choose, because one project, or at least one video, is going to be about a gigantic size villain that attacked Japan or attacked Tokyo in 1975. Hint, hint, hint. And the other project is another villain that attacked Japan or attacked Tokyo in 2001. Hint, hint, hint. So one of those two monsters or figures will be the next video on Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews. And you're going to have to wait and see which one it is. But either way, it's going to be a gigantic, it's going to be awesome, and y'all are going to love it. Yes, yes, yes. But in the meantime, if you can find this guy for a good price, I highly recommend that you go after it. There's no question about that. So ladies and gentlemen, I finally give to you the epic vinyl model kit from Rotokaiju of the deluxe edition of the awesome Mechanikong from its epic appearance from King Kong Escapes. Yes, yes, yes. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see y'all again on this Figure Move review. All right? Y'all take it easy.